The world's largest natural gas processing facility is on fire this morning. Ras Laffan Industrial City in Qatar, responsible for approximately 30% of all global LNG supply, was struck overnight in what Iranian state media describes as a direct retaliatory operation. Satellite imagery shows black smoke columns. Emergency shutdown protocols triggered across the entire LNG terminal complex. Qatari officials confirmed significant damage, and Donald Trump, at 7:14 a.m. Eastern, is blaming Israel, not Iran, Israel. A sitting American president publicly assigning blame for the destruction of the world's largest gas facility to America's closest regional ally is the sentence that changes the political architecture of this conflict as fundamentally as the strike changes its economic architecture. Before we go deeper, hit the subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. What happened at Ras Laffan last night is not just an energy story. It is the moment this conflict fully transformed into a global economic crisis with consequences for every person on Earth who pays an energy bill. Subscribe now. I will wait. Here is the fast version of how we got here. Israel struck Iran's South Pars gas field in week 2 of this conflict. South Pars is the Iranian side of the world's largest natural gas reservoir, a geological formation that straddles the maritime boundary between Iran and Qatar. The Qatari side of that same formation is called the North Field. Ras Laffan is the industrial city Qatar built on its coastline specifically to process North Field gas into LNG for export. When Israel struck South Pars, Iran publicly warned that any damage to shared energy infrastructure would produce a symmetric response. That warning was issued through Iranian state media and was specific enough that energy market analysts flagged it in real time. 72 hours later, Iran struck Ras Laffan. The symmetry is deliberate and documented. Israel hit Iran's gas. Iran hit the gas facility connected to the same geological formation on the Qatari side. That targeting logic is not random. It is a message to every Gulf state hosting American military assets that shared energy infrastructure is now a legitimate target in Iran's operational framework. Ras Laffan is the facility whose damage produces global consequences that no other single target in this conflict could produce. Qatar supplies approximately 22% of global LNG trade. Ras Laffan is where virtually all of that supply is processed and loaded onto tankers. Japan imports approximately 40% of its LNG from Qatar. South Korea imports approximately 30%. Germany's accelerated LNG import dependency runs directly through Qatari supply contracts. Every European government that refused Trump's request to send warships to the Strait of Hormuz is now facing the direct economic consequence of a supply disruption at the facility their own energy security depends on. The political geometry is extraordinary. Trump's blame statement is the detail that every outlet is covering as a sidebar and that I am covering as the lead. His Truth Social post read, and I am quoting directly from the verified text, Qatar facility attacked. This is what happens when Israel strikes energy infrastructure without American approval. Very bad. The last 3 words, very bad, are the least significant part of that statement. The significant part is the phrase without American approval. A sitting American president just told the world publicly that Israel conducted military operations without American approval and that those operations triggered the destruction of a facility that supplies energy to American allies across Europe and Asia. That statement does 3 things simultaneously. It distances the United States from the Israeli strike on South Pars, establishing a political separation between American and Israeli military decision-making at the exact moment American allies need someone to blame for their energy crisis. It signals to Qatar, whose American base Al Udeid is the largest U.S. air facility in the Middle East, that Washington is not responsible for the chain of events that just damaged Qatar's primary economic asset. And it publicly fractures the U.S.-Israel alliance narrative in a way that every adversary of both countries is now reading and assessing for exploitable consequences. Now, what nobody is covering with sufficient analytical depth. The strike on Ras Laffan is not the end of the energy war targeting sequence. It is the middle of it. Go back through the Iranian military's public statements over the past 72 hours, and you find a targeting framework that is considerably more systematic than a single retaliation strike. The IRGC statement released alongside the Ras Laffan operation listed 4 additional energy infrastructure categories as legitimate targets going forward. The Habshan gas processing facility in Abu Dhabi, which processes approximately 60% of Abu Dhabi's gas output, the Bab oil field in Abu Dhabi, which feeds directly into UAE crude export capacity, Saudi Aramco's Abqaiq processing facility, the single most important oil processing node on Earth, which processes approximately 7% of global daily oil supply, and the UAE's Fujairah pipeline terminus, which was built specifically as a Hormuz bypass route to allow UAE oil exports to continue even if the strait was blocked. Iran just listed the Hormuz bypass as a target. Read that again. The infrastructure built to circumvent an Iranian blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is now on Iran's public target list. Okay, I have to be fair. The other side has a point. First, Iran's claim must be assessed against its consistent pattern of overstating strike effects. Qatar Energy confirmed an incident and activated emergency protocols, but did not confirm total operational shutdown. LNG supply disruption and LNG facility destruction are different outcomes with materially different market consequences. Second, Trump's blame assignment may be strategic positioning rather than an accurate factual account. The public statement that Israel acted without American approval may be designed to protect the U.S.-Qatar relationship and the Al Udeid basing arrangement rather than to accurately describe the operational coordination between Washington and Tel Aviv. Third, the IRGC's published target list may be designed to create deterrence and economic panic rather than to reflect plans Iran intends to execute. Listing Abqaiq costs Iran nothing if it never strikes it. It produces enormous market disruption simply by being on the list. But here is where I have to be direct about what the evidence shows. The strike on Ras Laffan happened. The targeting logic connecting it to South Pars is documented and explicit. Iran warned publicly that symmetric retaliation would follow the South Pars strike. 72 hours later, it arrived, precisely at the other side of the same geological formation. The IRGC's public target list for future energy infrastructure strikes is published, specific, and includes the Hormuz bypass route that Gulf states built to survive an Iranian blockade. And the global LNG market opened this morning with the largest single-session price spike since the 2022 European energy crisis. That is not a prediction. It is a current market reality reflecting the assessed probability of further supply disruption by energy traders who have read the same target list. Here is what you need to watch. Qatar Energy's operational status update is the most important single data point for the energy market in the next 48 hours. Any statement about partial operational restoration versus full shutdown will determine whether the LNG price spike stabilizes or accelerates. Watch the U.S.-Qatar diplomatic response. Qatar hosts Al Udeid. Qatar just had its primary economic asset damaged in a chain of events that Trump is publicly attributing to Israeli military action. How Qatar's government responds to that specific attribution will tell you whether the Al Udeid basing arrangement survives this incident intact, and watch whether Iran strikes any of the 4 additional targets on its published list. The first strike from that list converts Iran's targeting framework from a threat posture to an active energy war campaign with consequences that extend to every LNG-dependent economy on Earth. Subscribe now. Turn on notifications. When Qatar Energy's status update is released, I will cover it immediately. When the U.S.-Qatar diplomatic exchange produces public statements, I will analyze every word. When the energy market opens tomorrow, I will break down what the price data is telling us about how traders are reading the next phase. Ras Laffan is burning. Trump is blaming Israel. Iran published a target list that includes Abqaiq and the Hormuz bypass. Evidence first, analysis second. You decide what it means. This is today.